I made a decision myself that I want to offer myself to serve the continent.
We said yes because Raila is competent.
Yes.
And we are looking at Kenya's national interests and Africa's national interests.
Opposition leader Raila Odinga welcomes government support for his African Union Commission AUC bid, expressing gratitude for the establishment of a secretariat to spearhead his campaign efforts.
Wakati rais anatuinua kwa heshima kama kitaifa katika ulimwengu, wewe unamvuta longi kule nyuma.
Itakuwa ni makosa wakati wewe unaingia kiti unaanza kuretreat to the tribal cocoon.
Kenya Kwanza leaders led by Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi continue their onslaught against Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and his camp, terming the DP's latest campaign in his Mount Kenya home turf as retrogressive and tribal. And Anglican Archbishop Jackson Ole Sapit calls on the government to rethink its taxation system, especially concerning proposed taxes and VAT on edible oils and food products that will affect the already overburdened Kenyans.
We want to continue encouraging Kenyans. Please move away, because you are becoming part of the cause of the deaths that we are getting through the climate change adversities.
Plus, the government reiterates its commitment to removing all those living in riparian land, water sources and national forests without delay. Well, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us right here on K24 Evening Edition. I'm Alan Owino. Our sign language interpreter for this session is Evelyn Wangoi. Opposition leader Raila Odinga has welcomed the government's support for his AUC bid. Speaking during a joint press briefing with the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, Odinga said the move the government has taken to set up a secretariat will help his bid for the top seat. The secretariat will, among other duties, develop a campaign strategy for the former Prime Minister and prepare him for a public debate ahead of the elections next year. Brian Amwai reports.
As the deadline for the submission of the region's nomination for the AUC candidate draws to a close, the race for the top seat continues to gain momentum. The government of Kenya, stepping up its campaign for former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, has set up a secretariat that will spearhead Odinga's campaign as the government prides itself in the candidature of the opposition leader.
We have a visionary leader to fire up the African Union to greater levels. The Right Honorable Raila is a Pan-Africanist who naturally espouses the Think Africa Above All guiding principle of the AU Commission.
That I am vying for a position in Africa, not in the government of the Republic of Kenya. But I need the endorsement of the government of Kenya for that African position.
The established secretariat, which includes Odinga's strategy team, will help in Odinga's campaign by preparing all the briefs for Odinga, developing a campaign material including digital presence, and preparing for a public debate that will be broadcast live to all the African citizens. The team has already started preparing Odinga for his campaign by readying his documents for submission to AU by the end of June.
The campaigns are led by the state with highly experienced and knowledgeable officers. The State Department for Foreign Affairs has established a campaign secretariat which includes the candidate's strategy team. Currently, the team is firming up preparatory and application documents together with requisite translations of the resume into 6 AU languages. That is French, English, Kiswahili, Arabic, Portuguese, and Spanish. This should be ready for submission to the AU Secretariat by the end of June 2024.
Odinga and the government have vowed to work hand in hand to ensure he wins the race.
I have been very encouraged by the number of senior government officials offering to be part of this journey out of an understanding that we are in this as Kenya and not as partisan political parties.
that the strategy is in place, and we shall be looking at all the challenges and opportunities as we go along.
Odinga's candidature has, however, been viewed as a way for the government to get him away from the local political scene. The former Prime Minister has said his bid was not decided by the state.
Nobody has asked me. The Kenya government did not ask me. I made a decision myself that I want to offer myself to serve the continent. And as you know, you cannot run for this position without being sponsored by your country. Your candidature is not valid until your country has said yes. So I was myself pleasantly surprised that the Kenya government said they would support me. I was expecting them to say no. I don't know the reason why they said yes.
We said yes because Raila is competent. Yes. And we are looking at Kenya's national interests and Africa's national interests.
The former Prime Minister believes he fits the bill as he promises to push for a more united African continent once he clinches the seat, decrying non-tariff barriers that have stood in between nations' integration with each other and promoting trade. Odinga faces competition from Fozia Yusuf Adam of Somalia, Mohammed Ali Yusuf of Djibouti, and Vincent Meriton of Seychelles. And as the country sets up a spirited campaign, Odinga will need 2/3 of the 55 eligible votes to replace Musa Faki of Chad, whose term expires by the end of the year. It is a campaign that has gained support from across board, and as the days draw to a close, the government of Kenya is confident that Raila Odinga is qualified enough to be the next AUC chair. Brian Amuai, K24, Nairobi.
Anglican Archbishop Jackson Ole Sapit has called on the government to rethink its taxation system, particularly concerning proposed taxes and VAT on edible oils and food products that could further burden Kenyans. Ole Sapit emphasized the potential increase in job losses and food insecurity if some of these clauses are passed. And as Harry Chimea reports, various organizations appearing before the departmental committee hearing public inputs on the Finance Bill 2024 have decried the lack of strategies to boost the Kenyan economy, noting that Kenyans are being subjected to more, if not double taxes.
Our association represents
the 8th day of public participation on the Finance Bill 2024 drew various organizations, from businesses to advocates and citizens to the Anglican Church.
you took your time to come and have your views heard.
Led by Bishop Jackson Ole Sapit, the Anglican Church of Kenya argued that several proposed tax measures would overburden struggling Kenyans and potentially increase job losses in the country.
As individuals and households allocate more of their income towards meeting tax obligations, their discretionary spending on essential goods and services may decrease, leading to ripple effects across various sectors of the economy, including retail, manufacturing, and services, thereby resulting in decreased demand for goods and services, potential jobs losses, and economic downturn.
Bishop Sapit outlined the effects of increasing the VAT threshold from 5 million shillings to 8 million shillings, as well as the impact of raising excise duty on edible oil by 25% and listing bread among products subject to value-added tax.
I've had an argument of people who say bread is for the rich because they are the ones who use it. But I just want to challenge all of us to go to the Mjengo places where people depend on that bread and a bottle of soda. Scrap the proposed excise duty on vegetable oils to avoid these adverse effects.
Opposing the clause to tax bread from zero-rated to standard-rated, Bishop Sapit also argued that the church sacrament wine and unleavened bread should be categorized separately.
There should be a kind of a caveat that things like unleavened bread, which is purely for Holy Communion, it's not something you can eat and get satisfied, or altar wine. I think this you must now help us to see how you can segregate and remove all the wine from other wines in the shelves.
He further reiterated the importance of maintaining zero rating for agriculture pest control products instead of adding them to the list of VAT-exempted goods. He warns that if passed, sellers of pesticides will no longer claim input VAT on their sales, potentially leading to a rise in the sale of pesticides, which in turn affects farmers.
Bon David, Member of Parliament.
Generation Z were also not left behind, voicing their concerns about proposals that impact low-income earners and digital economic growth, particularly levies on gadgets like video cameras, which could hamper the creative sector.
This 24,000 shillings threshold be retained, and alternatively, for the sake of revenue generation, the law can be amended to require that anyone making such payments to declare them without having to deduct payments on amounts below 24,000. As a Gen Z, we prefer the flexibility of the gig economy, which means that we are acting or working as consultants and independent contractors.
To this proposal is that you guys should drop it. And I also checked on Gigi for a second-hand camera, and also they range from 30,000 to 35,000. That was still beyond my reach.
Institution of Engineers, among other stakeholders, called for tax-exempt manufacturing and construction, while others urged the government to drop the eco levy that could lead to price increases for products like diapers.
For removal of tax exemptions for the manufacturing and construction sectors, it's a view that the clause should remain to be tax-exempt. And the reason is that the removal of the exemptions will discourage investments in manufacturing, plastics, recycling, and construction of specialized hospitals. This will increase unemployment, and it will reduce the gains made in fighting climate change.
So the eco levy on diapers, it sort of assumes that diaper is a very available commodity. Diapers is not a luxury, it's not optional. So unless we are saying that we want to encourage use of cloth diapers, which we all know are not absorbent.
This comes as the government seeks to utilize the finance bill to raise additional revenues to finance the 4.2 trillion shillings 2024-2025 budget, with the bill targeted at raising an additional 302 billion shillings. Harriet Chimea, K24.
President William Ruto's maiden budget is facing significant challenges as revenue targets have been reduced by 250 billion shillings, forcing the Treasury to rely more on domestic borrowing compared to external sources. With domestic borrowing set at 589 billion and external borrowing at 319 billion, there are concerns over the government's ability to meet its financial obligations. Additionally, the development budget has been slashed by 75 billion, while recurrent expenditure has increased by 51 billion. As Joel Tachana reports, Kenyans seeking loans from local banks may face high interest rates or even be denied loans altogether as the government is considered a better client. The Supplementary Budget 2 report was today tabled and debated in Parliament, which has now revised President William Ruto's maiden budget by slashing 24 billion Kenyan shillings from the proposed 144B by the National Treasury. However, the reduced development budget by 75 billion was a concern despite recurrent expenditure increasing by 51 billion. Ups revenue targets following that projection.
Starting on order 95, Mr. Speaker.
The Supplementary Budget 2 report was today tabled and debated in Parliament, which has now revised President William Ruto's maiden budget by slashing 24 billion Kenya shillings from the proposed 144 billion by National Treasury.
The business of having to do budgetary revisions thrice in a year is not very good budgetary practice.
We have to bite the bullet and go to reduce what we had budgeted for so that we are able to actually live within our means.
It is good the last supplementary budget be done at least 2 months before the end of the financial year.
However, the reduced development budget by 75 billion was a concern, despite recurrent expenditure increasing by 51 billion Kenya shillings.
The more we continue reducing development budget in our supplementary budgets, the more we are not helping the economy to grow.
We are reducing so much from the social side and leaving more on the defense side. And more importantly, that is where our people are suffering.
Revenue targets following projection of shortfall have now been reduced by 250 billion, causing the deficit of 900 billion in the budget to be financed more domestically. The Treasury will now borrow 589 billion locally compared to 319 billion externally, which directly affects access to loans by Kenyans.
Ambitious budgets that actually make us look for ways to raise money that sometimes actually pits us against an economy that is struggling and an economy that has been dwindling.
The Ndindi Nyoro-led committee also tabled the budget estimates for the upcoming fiscal year, which will stand at 3.91 trillion.
The budget for this financial year is 4.006 trillion Kenya shillings, Honorable Speaker.
The 2.9 trillion revenue targets, however, raise eyebrows of whether the revenue collecting body KRA would hit the targets despite already experiencing challenges in the current fiscal year.
The only sunshine in that, Honorable Speaker, is that over 750 billion will be going into paying domestic debt, Honorable Speaker, in terms of interest rates, and therefore this is money that could end up in the pockets of Kenyans.
The consolidated fund services will gobble 1.08 trillion Kenya shillings, in which the lion's share is meant for repayment of loans. Following a mediation on the division of revenue bill between the Senate and National Assembly, 400 billion has now been allocated to county governments. The Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung will on Thursday next week present the budget for the financial year 2024-2025 in Parliament.
Thank you, Honorable Murui.
Joel Chacha, K24 TV, Nairobi.
Kenya Kwanza leaders led by Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi have continued their onslaught against Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and his camp in a sustained tug of war within the ruling coalition. Speaking at St. Paul's Chep, Tawai Girls in Mosop, Nandi County, the leaders have termed DP's latest campaign in his Mount Kenya home turf as retrogressive and tribal. We'll be giving you that report after we get back on our first break right here on K24 Evening Edition. Let's take that break. We'll be back with more.
Have you watched K24? We would love to hear from you. Send us your feedback on what you like and what you don't like and why. You can use any platform to reach us. We can be reached on Facebook, SMS,